Since the beginning of 2025, I have put out these meals videos every 2 weeks, and it shows some of the meals that we are making and eating, and also it's a sneak peek into our lives. Now, the way that these get edited and put up, they're kind of a couple weeks behind, but a new video goes up on the channel every 2 weeks. But the timeline for this video is kind of funny. It is actually the last 2 weeks that we lived in our old house, and it's our first video we're filming here in the new house. If you're just meeting me, my name is Amy Cross, and this is the Cross Legacy, where I teach you how to save money on groceries. Our grocery budget is $135 per person, and we are a 2-person family, so our grocery budget is $270 per month. The way I'm able to stick to this grocery budget is we have zero produce waste, and we make sure that we use all the items that we're bringing into the house. Now, it has been over 4 weeks since I went to the grocery store. Normally I go grocery shopping every 3 to 4 weeks, but since we are in the last final days before we're getting ready to move, and we won't have a refrigerator when we first move into the next house, we wanted to make sure that we were stretching everything as far as we possibly could. So this video goes from the weeks of the 4-week mark to 6-week mark since I went to the grocery store. We were just feeling kind of nostalgic and wanted some hamburger helper-ish for dinner. And I ended up using up the last of the pasta I had, and I had some garden marinara sauce that I had made in the last video using some of the veggies up that I had in the garden and around the house. And I had stored that extra marinara in the freezer, so I was able to use that. And then I had some browned hamburger that I also had used in another video, and I pulled that out to be able to throw this meal together really quickly. With the tomato sauce, I did add a little bit of cottage cheese in there, which just helped to make it a little bit more creamy, and it was using up the cottage cheese. So this is past the 4-week mark of going to the grocery store, and we were still able to have a homey, cozy type of meal that we were craving. I have been thinking about it for a couple weeks, but finally had sat down and spent the entire day planning out the new appliances for the new kitchen, because it was the very tail end of the Labor Day sales. So I was able to get a stacking deal by buying multiple appliances on the same day and the Labor Day sale. So I was able to get 45% off on all of our new appliances. When we had priced our house to sell, we had decided to keep all of the old appliances, which were only a couple of years old, in the house. So when we moved, we were able to have professionals deliver the new appliances into this house, and it just made life a lot easier. But we had planned for this to be all new appliances from the very beginning. For dinner this night, I made some cauliflower fried rice. I used up some of that ham that I have stored in the freezer that was left over from last Easter. I still have a couple little packages of those that I want to make sure that I'm batch cooking and making some egg dishes here in the next videos. But I was able to use up that ham. We had some peas, and Mike doesn't realize that we end up having cauliflower rice with this, and then just a little bit of brown rice separately. And I mix it all together, and he does not know that it's mostly vegetables that he is eating. I had some gyros in the freezer that I ended up pulling out, and we made these into personal size pan pizzas. And this we had with some leftover cooked chicken that we had, salami, some peppers and onions. We used the rest of that marinara sauce that I had pulled out for the pizza sauce. I had some mozzarella cheese in the freezer. We were able to make pizzas that were different and new. And then after I had baked the pizzas, I put a little bit of balsamic glaze on them, and they were delicious. And I'm just trying to use up everything in my freezers that I know are not going to travel really well. I ended up making that into pumpkin muffins, is what the recipe is called for, but I put it in my 9x9 baking dish because that was the only baking dish I still had at the house that I hadn't packed up. So instead of putting it in muffin tins, I just baked it for a little bit longer. in that dish. And then we had that for dessert that night because we were craving something sweet, and it ended up being a great breakfast too. That has some sneaky ingredients in it, so it tastes like dessert, but it could be a breakfast. And we're going to put the link for this recipe in the description. So on this day, we actually get to meet the new owners that are moving into our house, and we thought it was going to be a really quick walkthrough, and it ended up where we spent 2 hours with them, just telling them all the stories of the house and the remodeling projects we had done. And they wanted to see and know everything about the garden and the flowers in the yard. And it just brought us so much peace that they were so excited to move into the house that we called home for 22 years. But the timing of this ended up extending much longer than I was planning. And so I didn't really have an easy plan for dinner that night. And I ended up just making a chickpea bean salad with that Thai peanut sauce that I had used in the Meal 17 video. So we had just sent out that recipe in the newsletter if you would like the Thai peanut sauce dressing recipe. But that ended up coming out so nice that we had it for dinner. It had a little bit of protein in it, and then we used the leftover salad the next few days for lunches. If you're not signed up for the newsletter, that is the first place that we send out new recipes. So make sure that you're checking out that link in the description to sign up for the newsletter. The next day was a long road trip day for us. We drove to the new house, this house, and did our final inspection here. So we got to walk around the house with it totally being empty and check off all the check marks and make sure that everything was great to move in. And then we had dinner with our kids. We brought another load of plants over to make sure that they were over here safely. And then we ended up heading back home. So we didn't get home until about midnight. For dinner this night, I had some cooked ground beef in the freezer, and I pulled that out with some Mexican quinoa that I also had meal prepped that was in the freezer. And I mixed those together, and we had soft tacos for dinner. Now, I haven't been to the grocery store in over 5 weeks, and you can see the fresh produce, including the fresh avocado that we had on the soft tacos. And this is just a reminder to make sure when you get anything like Greek yogurt, sour cream, or cottage cheese, to make sure you're storing that in a glass jar with a metal lid that's completely airtight, and it will stay fresh about 2 weeks past the best by date. So normally Greek yogurt is staying fresh about 6 weeks. You can push it out till 8 weeks if you store it in a glass jar with a metal lid. And since we are so close to moving, I haven't been making as many meals as I normally do, but these instant oatmeal packets have been coming in really handy for breakfast. So for dinner this night, I made sure to make some cooked chicken in the Instapot. I made enough for this dinner and one more meal so I could finish packing up the Instapot and some more of the dishes in the kitchen. But we had chicken for dinner with some homemade canned carrots and a spinach salad with poppy seed dressing. And then we had some blueberries on that and some fresh peaches. And remember also, I haven't been to the grocery store at this point in 6 weeks. So as I was cleaning up the kitchen after making dinner, I was starting to realize that I had everything that I needed to make chicken pot pie. And that just seemed warm and cozy and perfect. And it ended up being that I made the filling for the chicken pot pie around 11 o'clock at night. And then I ended up putting that in a glass jar that I let cool down a little bit before I put in the refrigerator. And I hadn't decided at that point whether or not we would have it the next day or we would have it in our new house. But this was the last meal that I was making in our old house, and it was just truly special to be able to know that I was using up the last of the onions, celery, carrots, and frozen peas, and I had a frozen crust in the freezer, and I was able to put together this last homemade meal in our house. As I was standing at the kitchen and doing this, I was looking out the front window at the huge U-Haul that we had packed up all day to get ready to move the next day. And we decided on the next day, after we got the rest of the house loaded up, that we sat down with our best friends, Josh and Gary Joe, and I made that chicken pot pie for a last meal, a last dinner in our house. And then I washed up the dishes and packed the very last dishes into the U-Haul, and then we said goodbye to our house. So this video was the first 2 weeks of September. We moved out of our house on September 12th, and then we stayed with our kiddo for 2 days as we were getting prepared to move into this house and getting it all cleaned. So this video is a little bit shorter than normal, but I am so proud of us for making as many meals as we did at home and using up the items that we had on hand that we knew weren't going to travel very well. And also reducing the takeout that we had during this time. There were a lot of sandwiches and protein drinks that we drank to fill in some of those spaces, but we didn't use it as an excuse to totally ruin our budget. So make sure that you're following the series. There's an entire playlist that starts back at January 2025, and it really shows how we go through the seasons and our meals change during the different seasons of weather and of life. And then my book, The Zero Waste Produce Guide, teaches you all of the tips to be able to keep your produce fresh for weeks, as I show in these videos, which we also have our meal planners, and that is how I keep track of all the ingredients we have in our house, the meals I'm making, and most important, the grocery budget. These are linked in the description below, and there's a special discount code.